What is up, guys? It is that time again. We got a brand new episode of Dexter, now episode 8. Only 2 more before the end of the season. And I'm here to tell you, not only did I like the episode, but what really hit me at the end of this one, which also hit me at the end of the last one, is that I don't think I've been this on the edge of my seat, this like impatient in a good way, waiting week to week between episodes, maybe since the last season of Breaking Bad. It's been a very long time since a season of television has just got me gripped by the throat the way that this one does. And so per usual, we're just going to go through the events of the episode, talk about every little story beat individually. Normally I try to categorize them by characters, but this episode had so much going on and was bouncing around so much, I'm just going to go in sequential order. I think it makes more sense this time. So you have a thing that happens where basically at the beginning of this one, after the end of last week where Batista had that face-to-face confrontation with Dexter, left his AirPods in his car and was using it to track him. The beginning of this episode opens up with Batista starting to log all of his investigation, almost as if he's preparing for if he's killed, somebody finds it and maybe he just can pick up where he's left off. I'm not exactly sure, but he's logging it, and he's got, you know, the classic detective thing with the walls up with the different red string, and he's starting to keep track of Dexter's routine as a your car driver. And so he has like a very specific routine that he goes to, waiting for something to be out of the ordinary. While he's doing that, Dexter is, you know, doing his regular routine while talking to Harry and very much planning the kill of the final person left, which is Al, the Rapunzel killer. And so he calls Al to try to set up like a little meet. Al is very much trying to get out of town now that all these killings have been happening. It's kind of, as he says, like sucked the life out of these little meetings, these little getaways. And so Dexter convinces him to meet him right after he is done with Hamilton, which is what he says the last thing he's going to do in New York before he heads home to New England. And so that is all set up. Something that I didn't really touch on last week, because honestly I just kind of spaced over it, but I want to talk about here in relation to Al. I think that he low-key might be like the creepiest of any of these like serial killer friend characters that he had. Like creepier than Dismalchian, certainly creepier than Kristen Ritter and Neil Patrick Harris. Whenever you got that little video and that maniacal, like almost Pennywise laugh that he had while he was strangling that girl on the jogging trail, that was really eerie to me. So I'm very curious to see what exactly happens with this character. We'll get back to that. It shows Prater, who is aiding in setting up this year's gala event, and you know he brings up something about needing some handicap access to the stage, and then Charlie comes to him with all of her suspicions. And I really want to know what's going on with his relationship with Charlie, because presumably, like, that's the person he trusts the most. That's the person that his life is literally in the hands of. But he always treats her like she's scum. Like, he doesn't care about her opinion. He wants her to shut the fuck up and just protect him and don't ever bring your opinion to me again. Like, I want to know what exactly is going on with those two characters, because that doesn't feel like a boss and employee relationship. That feels like there's something deeper there. Like he's got something on her, or he's got a hold of her, and she's just like forced into almost servitude with him, as it doesn't have a choice but to protect him. I don't know, but it feels that way, because for somebody who's your head of security, every time she brings anything up, he just talks down to her. And that happens again here, where, you know, she basically just brings up kind of the obvious, which is like, hey, I don't know exactly what's going on, but as soon as this guy Red joins the group, suddenly everybody else is dying one by one. Prater is sticking to the story that Dexter has spun, which is that, you know, the one person, Gemini, was trying to take them all out, and of course then Mia got busted, and then they took care of her in prison. And I will say this is still kind of a little bit of convenient writing, a little bit of contrivance. You know, not that I know enough about Prater to think that he's like this genius mastermind, but he seems like a pretty smart guy. And the fact that he's not even entertaining any of this at this point feels a little bit odd, that he's just wholeheartedly trusting this brand new guy. So unless he knows a little something that maybe we don't know that he knows, like maybe he knows that Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher, he recognizes him, maybe there's going to be some kind of reveal. I'm not going to put money on it, but it feels like he should be a little more suspicious, or he knows more than Charlie does, and he just doesn't want to let on to that. Nonetheless, she gives all her suspicions. He very much just rebuffs all of them and is very antagonistic towards her. Every time you show Uma Thurman, she just looks more and more angry. So again, I think by the end of this season, it feels like she's going to do something to take out Prater even more so than Dexter is. That's how it feels to me. Eventually, we get to Harrison in the park playing with Elsa and her son, and they have another conversation in regard to the mold and the landlord and stuff. He tells her about he's going to join college. He's happy for him, but then says that, yeah, the landlord hasn't done anything. He's actually like tripled down on me withholding rent, and so now I can't even sleep there. He's turned the heat and everything off in the building. And so Harrison feels responsible, as if him mouthing off to the guy is what has caused him to triple down on how horrific he's being as a landlord. And so he wants to eventually go to Dexter for help. Dexter, meanwhile, is preparing his kill room. So he's trying to think of a place to nab Al. Al's a bigger guy, so he can't take him too far. And so he finds this little wig shop where they are out of town, they're closed for the weekend or whatever, and starts to make his kill room inside of this wig shop, which, again, contrived, but whatever. I don't care. Like, the fact that it's poetic that the guy that takes ponytails is going to be killed inside of a wig room or a wig shop, and it just happens to be open. Whatever. We'll go along with it. Those are the minor contrivances that I'm not going to sit and pick apart. But he starts to set up his kill room, and Batista ends up tracking him to this spot because it's the only spot that he has done outside of his routine where he stayed more than an hour. So Batista finds the little block that he's on and looks around, but doesn't really know what building that he's in. So this ends up getting punted to later because as soon as he's there, Dexter's off to the races doing something else. Meanwhile, when all this is happening, you have Detective Wallace, who is yet again listening to the same fucking song. How weird that is, by the way. But she is starting to really heavily research the Bay Harbor Butcher. And I thought it was a cool touch, although I still feel like they really haven't earned this yet as far as Original Sin. I thought it was a cool touch that they have an article that pops up with Patrick Dempsey's character showing that there is like this root of misdeeds going on inside of Miami Metro. That was a nice thing. I actually paused and like read the article to see what all they said there. And it kind of follows up the ending of Original Sin, where it basically says that the son gives a testimony, and then now he's the lead suspect in the killings from Original Sin. But as we know, Dexter kills him, so they're not going to find his body. So she's looking into everything, and then her partner, was it Oliva or whatever the hell his name is, Oliva, comes in and is dressed up, trying to tell her that we need to get ready for the gala. She's refusing to go. He sees that she's looking into the Bay Harbor Butcher. And so they're starting to plant the seeds of her possibly getting onto Batista's side. Dexter starts to receive acupuncture from Blessing's daughter, and they're talking about certain things. And very oddly, he just like openly gives information like, oh yeah, about your dad, or she's frustrated with her dad, something with her boyfriend and her moving to college. And he basically tries to justify it by saying, like, well, keep in mind, he's a little stressed because he used to be a child soldier. And she's like, what? I thought it was odd and very naive for him to just let that information out there. Like, he made it pretty clear that's not something he talks about. It stands to reason he probably wouldn't tell his children about it. So that was kind of a real goofball moment on Dexter, where, yeah, he's getting acupuncture and tells her that, and she freaks out and leaves. And so we got to punt that to later. And I'll come back to it. So then, yeah, that happens where he lets the cat out of the bag about Blessing's past. And then he goes to meet with Harrison to discuss this landlord situation. And again, I'm really enjoying the conversations and the character building, the relationship building between Dexter and Harrison. It's night and day from New Blood, and I just enjoy so much more what they're doing here. So I really like the fact that he's able to come to Dexter in confidence, and there's even like some in-jokes there where he's like, maybe I'll talk to the guy and intimidate him. And he's like, what? He's like, oh, no, I mean, he's an asshole, but he doesn't fit the code. Like, the fact that he's just like, hey, Dad, don't murder him and bisect his body. Like, don't do that. That was cute. So, yeah, he tells Dexter about this, and Dexter wants to be a helpful father. So he's like, all right, cool, I'll talk to the guy. I could be pretty persuasive. And eventually goes to do that, sits inside this guy's waiting room for hours, and the guy's just waiting him out because he doesn't want to talk to him. And then Dexter forces his way into the office, and he just outbursts and like violently shoves his way past him. And you get this like dark urge with Dexter where he even says something like, oh, the fact that Harrison was able to control himself from killing this guy is pretty impressive because I don't know if I can do that. So we're setting up some interesting places for that to go. And I genuinely thought this was going to be the point where we're going to start to really see a heel turn Dexter start to show its head. Because I said either last week or the week before, I think it's a possibility that in these 2 or 3 seasons of Dexter Resurrection that we're going to start to see Dexter take a much darker turn than we've seen in the past, where he's not really following his code as much and he's bending the rules to feed his kill urge. And you saw that in a scene earlier where, Dexter or his son calls him and he's starting to look up everything on this phone before he meets him and realizes that there has been a death at least that is a direct result of this guy being a shitty landlord. And so he's trying to justify it in his head. And Harry's like, no, come on, dude. Like, he doesn't fit the code. And Dexter's like, So I love that too. I love the back and forth between him and Harry this season has been great. Very like fatherly and very much diametrically opposed, where you have one kind of the voice of reason, whereas the other one's trying to justify doing some very reckless stuff. Where there was moments like that, but that wasn't always the color of their conversations in the past. So yeah, I enjoy that, and I'm curious how much further we're going to push that with Dexter, where he just wants to kill, and so we're going to figure out a way to make this happen, even if it doesn't cleanly fit the code. I don't know. Seems like something we're going to see some more out of. So something I forgot to mention, before he even goes to confront the landlord, he's actually meeting with Harrison in the little theater district because he's waiting on Al to get out of Hamilton. So he's kind of like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And eventually when he goes out, Al doesn't come out of Hamilton, and he calls him. And it turns out that Al he left Hamilton at intermission and is already, a good amount of the way back home, or so he says. I'm not completely convinced yet, but yeah, he's on the way back, gives Dexter, or he gives Red, calls him. He's like, hey man, I forgot to tell you, I'm sorry. I left a little early, but we'll catch up in a year if Prater does this thing again. Take care, man. And then he throws the phone out the window, which was interesting to me because you would think that Prater would want him to keep that, but there was something about that whole thing where it doesn't really show what road he's on, and the fact that he threw the phone away. It's possible that they're just going to punt his character to the next season or some other time down the road, and we'll see Al come back as like the one that got away. Or it's possible that he hasn't really left New York, but he's kind of going dark and he's going to kill in New York before he eventually goes home. I don't know. We'll see. 2 episodes left. They don't have a lot of time to shove stuff into, but it did feel a little peculiar how they exited Al seemingly off of the show like that. But it leaves this hole in Dexter where now he's already got his murder boner going, and now he's like, well, fuck, the one guy that I needed to kill, now I can't. I'm not going to follow him home, even though he tries very much to get information so he could do that. And Al doesn't give him what he needs. Eventually, now that the Dexter's got like this frustration that he can't kill Al, he goes back to his little apartment, and Blessing, he's sitting down asking questions about landlord code, basically, to his wife, trying to think of ways that he can talk to this landlord. And Blessing comes in very clearly upset, and they go downstairs, and he starts getting really pissed off about the fact that he let out his secret to his daughter. And, Dexter kind of apologizes, but seems confused by the whole thing, which again was a little odd to me. It's like, that was a real goofball moment. I feel like Dexter's smart enough to know that was clearly him, like, I don't know, flubbing something. But nonetheless, anything going on with Blessing, even the stuff with the daughter, it's stuff I'm least interested in the show so far. Not that I hate it, but I liked Blessing for the first episode or so, and then every time we've cut back to them since, I'm just like, I don't really care. Like, I don't really care about the mom's funeral and some of this other stuff, and then the acupuncture, and now this, and it's like the past of Blessing. It feels like they're building up to some kind of reveal. I know that there's the theory out there that he's the New York Ripper. I don't personally buy into that one, and I personally would not enjoy that as a reveal. So to me, it feels more like a red herring at this point, especially with the way they lead the conversation off, where he's like, you betrayed me, and then walks away and goes outside. I'm just not into it. They got to do something strong in the next episode or 2 to really win me over with this storyline. Otherwise, that to me is the most insignificant piece of this season by quite a bit. And so now he kind of pivots to directing his attention to the landlord. And my favorite scene of this entire episode happens where he's got like the pantyhose mask on, like, to obscure his face. And he's looking inside of this trunk, and the landlord is coming out of this building, And he comes up and he M99s him and throws him in the trunk. And then somebody comes around the corner and he's like, oh, he tries to like panic and shut it. And he pulls his mask up and it's still like hanging. He's like, he looks and the guy didn't even pay him any mind, just walks right past him. And he's like, the fuck? I love New York. It turns around and shuts the trunk. That was awesome. That was awesome. A great little comedic moment there, which again, as I've said for 8 weeks now, is a really big strength that this season has had, is bringing a lot of that dark humor back in those great moments. So while Dexter is doing all of this with the landlord, Harrison links back up with the blonde girl that he met at the little college introduction, the one that was given the tour, and asks her out on a date. And I think we all saw this coming from the moment that he met her. This girl was so forward and just so unashamedly flirting with him heavily. I'm surprised he didn't hook up with her in the first episode that he met her. But takes her on a little date. They're out dancing and stuff like that. And she reveals to him that she wanted to be a detective, but now she can't because the nerve damage in her arm is so bad that she's never going to be able to pass the test or the academy or whatever. And he encourages her by letting her know, like, hey, my dad was a blood spatter analyst. He worked forensics. He put numerous people away. Didn't ever have to actually put on a badge. So I thought that was a nice little scene where he's actually kind of like respecting and enjoying the legacy of his father beyond the serial killer stuff. Again, really enjoying the way that they're building Harrison and Dexter's connection. And then they go fuck. As you would expect. I like the moment, though, whenever they're starting to go at it and he's, got half his clothes off. She's got half her clothes off. And then he like stops for a second. He's like, hey, you good? Clearly as a result of Elsa kind of like pumping the brakes on him when he's trying to kiss her. And she's just like, shut up. And then they start going at it and he just goes down on her. Oh, attaboy, Harrison. Her pleasure first, guys. Always remember that. Now, as far as her character, like I have my doubts that she's going to stick around very long. I don't feel like this is going to be like his long-term love interest or whatever. It feels like they spent so much time building his relationship with Elsa that this, whatever happens with this blonde girl, this little flirtation, this little fling is going to redirect him to Elsa at some point. Maybe it'll turn into a love triangle thing by the end of it where he cares more about Elsa but likes the thrills of this girl, and it's going to put him in a rough spot. But for me, I don't know. There's just something about this girl that doesn't feel like this long-term character. Maybe she'll end up being the victim of something that'll send Harrison into a little bit of a spiral. Maybe she'll be a New York Ripper victim by the last episode. I don't know, but it just doesn't feel like this is anything more than like a couple episode little detour to eventually redirect him towards Elsa, who clearly is the one that he wants to be with. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. So now you have the landlord who has taken the place of Al on the table covered in plastic. And Dexter is basically just trying to intimidate him. He's left the mask on, which he wouldn't do if he was planning on killing him. And he's got the knife against his throat, and he's doing the same song and dance as he does when he's going to kill somebody, where he's, letting them know what they've done, trying to get them to open their eyes to it. And Batista, yet again, tracks him to this location because his car is there again. And this time he sees the lights, because it's nighttime, glowing out of this closed wig shop. And so he starts to pick the lock at the bottom, and Dexter hears it just as he opens the lock and raises his knife. And then as soon as Batista walks in, all of a sudden you've got the guy, I always forget the actor's name from Sopranos, and he's running out. He's going to fucking kill me. And he's half covered in plastic, about knocks him over on the way out. And Batista runs after him, and no sign of Dexter. Dexter's already hauled ass. He looks at his phone, and the AirPods are already going down the street. And he goes back in and sees the prepared kill room. And I need to rewatch. I need to refresh myself really quickly on a few of the older seasons to see if Batista ever really knew what the Bay Harbor Butcher's kill room looked like as far as the plastic and everything. Because clearly he puts two and two together very quickly like that. And I'm curious if he just knows that this is a table prepared for killing somebody, or if he remembers the plastic. Maybe you can even tell me in the comment section below. I know that LaGuerta got a lot of things and she was putting things together, but it's been a number of months since I've rewatched Dexter, and so I can't remember if the plastic kill room was ever something that was discovered by them or not. But nonetheless, he knows, like, holy fuck, like, this is the moment where all the suspicions, even though he was pretty damn sure he was on the right track, this is the moment where for Batista, I'm 100% correct. Like, this fucking guy is the Bay Harbor Butcher, and I was this close to finding him. And this is the point of the episode that actually, usually after these episodes end, I talk to my buddy Charles on Willis Greedia, and me and him disagreed pretty harshly on this one. Not that we were arguing, but we had just very much opposed as far as how we took this sequence. So Batista immediately calls Detective Wallace. He's like, hey, I got the proof. Get your ass over here right now. And, Dexter drives off and knows that Batista has tracked him somehow, so he's ripping his car apart, finds the AirPods, smashes the fuck out of him, and basically says something to the line of, like, I have to end this. And so now I wonder, like, how exactly Dexter's going to take the fight to Batista in episode 9. So now the AirPods are gone, and Detective Wallace shows up at this little kill room, and they start to look around, and Batista's giving him, like, he's so, like, on edge, and he's so with adrenaline that he's right, and he's this fucking close to solving the case that's been haunting him for over a decade, that he doesn't realize what a fool he looks like. And this is where me and Charles opposed, because Charles, when I was talking to him, he's like, yeah, I like the episode, but I hate the fact that they made Batista look like a fool, and they're already doing like the LaGuerta thing with him so quickly. And what I had said is that everybody that goes after Dexter this harshly eventually hits a point where he outsmarts them because he's so unassuming. Like, it's so out of left field that this guy would be the Bay Harbor Butcher that it's very easy to make you look foolish if you don't have absolute, like, indisputable evidence, which nobody ever does. Even LaGuerta had him almost dead to rights, and still it wasn't enough. Nobody believed her. And so you have this scene here where Batista is so on adrenaline that he calls before even thinking straight about how this looks or what evidence he actually has. He just has like circumstantial stuff that completely connects for him because of his past and what he knows, but to anybody else outside of that is not going to be conclusive whatsoever. And so he starts to tell them like, hey, he was going to kill somebody here. Oh, did you see him about to kill somebody here? Well, no, I got here too late, but I heard his car. But did you see? So you heard his car, but you didn't see him get into the car? Well, no, he got out because he heard me breaking in. So you broke into this place? Well, yeah, I tracked him with AirPods. Oh, well, you have a warrant? Well, no, he gave me a ride. It's a long story. Like every single thing that he says, there's this very common sense thing that a detective without bias is going to think like, this is weird, dude. Like you seem like you're really reaching here. And it didn't bother me personally at all because I really do believe somebody in Batista's position would jump to that and would like immediately try to get back up without really thinking through how everything is going to look. And so you have a situation now where now he has tainted his credibility even further, on a case that's a huge long shot that was already going to be difficult to get a couple of New York detectives to get behind him, which eventually leads Detective Wallace to look even further into this and look back over these articles, and she calls Quinn and asks Quinn about everything, and Quinn lets it out that Batista no longer works for Miami Metro. Like, he just kind of retired weirdly out of nowhere. So he gives her just the amount of information she needs to now have these weird suspicions, while at the same time, she lets Quinn know that Batista is in New York pursuing the Bay Harbor Butcher case. And so there's a lot going on in that little reveal there, where now Detective Wallace is looking back over pictures and ends up in that little bowling picture, which very much suggests that she's now going to operate under the suspicion that maybe Batista is the Bay Harbor Butcher, and now he's in New York trying to start his little reign of terror up again. And you have Quinn now, who has only been in the series as like a cameo before this, in like episode 4 or 3 or something like that. Maybe it was episode 2. But very early on in the season. And now he knows that Batista left the force to go pursue the Bay Harbor Butcher case, which to his knowledge has been closed for 10 years or however long. And Quinn getting into this, which I assume will probably be something that happens at the very end of this season, which will lead to him being a regular alongside Batista in season 2. That would be my assumption. He brings something really interesting, because if you have Batista, who is now operating under this suspicion that Dexter all along was the Bay Harbor Butcher, and now I have to use whatever amount of life I have left to finally put this right and get this guy fucking dead to rights. Quinn has kind of always known. Like, we haven't really said it out loud. It's kind of like this unspoken thing. But back in season 5, he was the one pursuing Dexter with all these suspicions, and everybody thought he was crazy, and got this close just to find that his buddy Stan Liddy was killed, and then the murder was about to be pinned on him, and Dexter exonerated him by fudging the evidence, which Quinn very much knew that he did. You have like this little silent acknowledgement at the end of season 5 where he's like, hey, thanks for the blood work. And so ever since season 5, it's kind of been this unspoken thing where it's like Quinn's backed off because he loves Deb, and he realizes that Dexter could probably fuck him up if he really wanted to, and definitely could end things and put a lot of pain on him. But it's never really brought up again, except for maybe the finale of season 8, where Dexter puts the pen into Captain Fuckhead, whatever his name is, the brain surgeon. And Batista's looking at it, and Quinn's like, it's like self-defense to me, partially because he loves Deb and partially because he's trying to help Dexter out. Like, this is me repaying you. Like, I'm going to make sure you're not going to sit here and fall for this. So I'd be really curious to just see what those conversations are going to be like if that's the direction they're heading, where Quinn is going to now come up to New York with Batista and say, hey, dude, what the fuck? He's like, I'm here pursuing Dexter, and Quinn's going to go, yeah, about that. Or if it's not that he actually knows that he's a killer, like the fact that he knew from back then Dexter was into some weird shit, and then now Batista's going to shine a light on the weird shit as the Bay Harbor Butcher. That's another version of this conversation that could be fascinating, where Quinn's like, holy shit, like, yeah, I was doing what you were doing fucking 10 years ago, not knowing what it was, but definitely like got that same smell that Dokes had, and I never got anywhere with it. This blows my mind and puts so many things into perspective. I'm fascinated to see where that goes. But yeah, now Detective Wallace is looking to be on Batista's ass for a few of these things. And then the episode ends with Dexter, now at least feeling like he's broken the trail of Batista, is having dinner with Harrison, kind of talking about the issue with the landlord and how he's taking care of that. And, they're having a good time just like they were earlier on in the episode. And all of a sudden, Dexter has this look like, oh, fuck, what the hell is he doing here? And Prater walks up and says, Red, I didn't know you had a son. And Uma Thurman's outside, like, looking satisfied. So clearly, she has followed him, figured something out, and now finally convinced Prater off screen that there's more to this guy than meets the eye. And that's what we're left with. And man, like, last week definitely was stronger as far as, Batista with that little detective look as Dexter's pulling away and that great needle drop happens as far as an episode ending. And I'm like, fuck, I just want to watch the next one now. But this one was up there where that happens with Prater. And I'm just like, oh, fuck, 7 days. Fucking shit. So overall, I really like the episode. I've seen a couple of people, my buddy Charles included, who have said that it's more of a filler episode. And I can agree with that, but I think that my tone of saying filler wouldn't be as negative as some other people who use that word. Like, most times when people say filler, to me, that equals like throwaway episode. It's like, this doesn't really need to be here. It's here so that we can fill out however much of the season we need to have. And maybe a few things got pushed forward a little bit for the characters, but overall, like, this is an hour of television that wasn't really all that significant. And I would not say that for this episode. I think there was a lot of great stuff in here, a lot of great moments. I really enjoyed how they progressed certain storylines forward. I thought the stuff with Batista coming this close to Dexter was great. That's always some of the best stuff in Dexter, when somebody's like that fucking close, hot on his trail. So that stuff was awesome, setting up a lot of very interesting places to go, not only for the end of this season, but maybe even places to go in season 2. But it was an episode that was, it wasn't as significant as a story jump as the last number of them, especially last week. It wasn't an episode where it was like filled with all these incredible moments. There was a lot of just little minimalist character stuff and then a few significant moments. So yeah, more of a filler episode than some of the past couple great episodes, but I wouldn't say that in a fully negative tone. Now let's end this off with just a little bit more New York Ripper talk. So this is obviously an episode that hasn't really pushed the needle in any direction for that storyline or potential reveal. As you guys know, I've speculated and theorized quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. I think there's a lot of potential characters that could be the New York Ripper that they've set up certain things with that's plausible to me. My favorite of the theories is the one that I was pushing, which is Jonah Mitchell. I don't think it's likely, but I also think that would be like the coolest reveal. But I've since seen a couple more theories that I certainly did not have, and one of them actually holds quite a bit of water that I don't really care for, but it does add up a little bit. And the other one is so nonsensical and ridiculous and just out of nowhere that it kind of makes me annoyed with the entire like fan theory market. Like it's just something for like clickbait YouTubers to make a thumbnail to get people to click on. So the one theory that I've seen get out there a little bit now is the boyfriend of Blessing's daughter, who we only saw, I think it was the funeral episode where, you know, he's supposed to go get ice or whatever, and Blessing kind of comes down on him, and then you got that moment where he gives Harrison the little like probiotic drink or whatever, and he's like, oh, it's for gut health. People are drawing the connection of a guy who's obsessed with gut health to the killer that rips out the guts. That's not very strong to me. However, since we have had the little audio tape released last week with the phone call that the New York Ripper leaves or the voicemail, I came across a TikTok that was playing them side by side with different characters. I do think the voice sounds a lot like Jonah, so I'm going to stick with that one. But it also does sound a lot like Blessing's daughter's boyfriend. I don't know what the fuck the guy's name is. And that's kind of the point of why I don't like it. It's a character that popped up once and then has had no significance to the season whatsoever. If that ends up being the reveal, I will be highly disappointed. Even more so than Blessing, because at least Blessing has been a presence the entire season. That guy would just be like, and here's your killer. Okay, I don't fucking care. So, yeah, we'll see. The other one that I've seen that, again, just because I was scrolling on TikTok and saw this, somebody theorizing this, and then I saw a thumbnail on YouTube where somebody was really pushing it and getting hundreds of thousands of views, which just fucking annoyed me, is that there's a theory out there now that the New York Ripper is none other than Joey Quinn. Guys, I know it's fun to theorize and stuff like that, but there's a limit. Not every person in the show has to have a connection to what is going on. And the only connecting tissue to that is like, oh, well, he's from New York. Remember, he came from New York. So maybe he killed a bunch of people and then came to New York or came to Miami Metro. And, you know, they haven't said definitively when the killing stopped. They've been using very vague language, I think, to keep so many red herrings out there, with Detective Wallace saying, hey, I've been studying this guy since I joined the force. They never say when she joined the force, but since I joined the force, you know, he stopped killing years ago. How many years ago? We don't know, just years ago. So there's so many different directions people are going to make sense of certain things, and there's so many vague terms being used that it allows for a lot of different theories to happen, which I like because it's fun to theorize and it's fun to not be in a box. And as Dexter fans, you know, we're little detectives and we know all these details and shit. So it'd be very easy to figure out who it probably is. If they were more precise with dates and shit, we would line it up ourselves. But that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, so now Joey Quinn's been a killer the entire time, and that's why he was tracking Dexter. No, that does not fucking track whatsoever with the character that we know. At all. At fucking all. So I hated that theory. I don't know if you guys have heard it. If I introduced you to it, I'm sorry for the eye roll that you just had. But yeah, not really pushing anything forward in that. At this point, honestly, it felt like the New York Ripper reveal was becoming like a Chekhov's gun at this point. They've mentioned it so many times. It's like, well, you gotta fire the gun by the end. Otherwise, people are going to be like, what the fuck was all that about? But I have a sneaking suspicion that we might end up punting that to season 2. I think there's a chance that we're going to end off this season with whatever happens narratively with all our main storylines here, most of which are going to get resolved. I assume at least the Batista stuff is going to get pushed into next season. But I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of episode 10, it's just revealed that a new New York Ripper killing has been found. And that's going to set up season 2 where the New York Ripper is going to be the big bad, but we're not necessarily going to reveal who it is yet. I think it's possible. I also think it's possible that they reveal it, but I think there's so much still left to go through, and we only have 2 episodes left, that it might be smart to punt that. And if they at least tease that it's coming in a way that's satisfying, it wouldn't be so much of a violation of the Chekhov's gun thing. And for those that don't know what that is, that's like a filmmaking or a screenwriting terminology where if you show a gun in the first act, it better fire by the third act. Otherwise, you've created like this hole. That's what Chekhov's gun refers to. But nonetheless, yeah, really enjoyed the episode. Is it filler? Yeah, probably, but I think it's good filler. I think it's entertaining filler, not dispensable filler. And I really look forward to next week. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with Dexter and Batista, especially. What's Prater going to do now that he knows that Harrison exists? Is Dexter now going to be found out? If and when he reveals himself as the Bay Harbor Butcher to Prater, is Prater going to be terrified, or is he going to be like, holy fucking shit, this is awesome, dude, let's hang out? I don't know. It's going to be cool to see it happen, though. So let me know what you guys thought of this episode, and we'll catch up in 7 long days.